John. I'm a luthier here at Sullivan Violins, and I have brought Annie Jacob-Perkins to talk with us about cellos. Annie is a sophomore at USC, University of Southern California, studying with Ralph Kirschbaum, and we're going to talk about cellos, cello sound, and what to look for when purchasing a cello.
So yeah, my name's Annie, and I'm a very happy customer of Sullivan Violins. I bought my cello about a year and a half ago now. It's a Ray Melanson made in 2006 in Rochester, Massachusetts, right? Yes, Massachusetts. And while I was looking for the cello, it was a very stressful process for me and probably for my parents too, because they're really expensive and you have to be sure that you like it when you buy it. So while I was talking to my friends who aren't musicians at University of Southern California, I realized how confusing the sound language that musicians and luthiers use can be. So I wanted to help explain that a little bit more with John today.
So as a musician, what are some of the terms that you hear musicians like yourself use to describe cello sound?
Some of the most common that I've heard are like whether a cello is dark or bright, or whether it's like loud or soft is pretty self-explanatory because those are words that you just use for sound. But when you're talking about a cello that's dark, it usually has a lot of overtones and it's not quieter, but the sound has more complexity to it, whereas a bright cello is going to sound more like a trumpet, kind of brassy and like really in your face. One thing that I love about my cello is that it's really sweet. The sound is very pure. There aren't a ton of overtones, which means that the cello really rings, and in a big hall, that's what conductors and audience members pick out about my cello, is that it's loud, but at the same time, it's not jarring or like overly in your face the way a super bright cello would be. I'm gonna play a bunch of cellos later, and one of the ones in the shop that Ken Sullivan made, the owner of the shop or co-owner of the shop, it's very growly and woody, and I can feel the deepest sounds happen in my legs while I'm holding the cello, which is great. The reason that I come to Sullivan Violins, I know I've talked to you about this before, but it's because you worked with me to make sure that my instrument is set up so that it gets the best sound that it possibly can, since like when you get an instrument and you're just trying it for the first time, it might not be what you want it to sound like, and a lot of times that's the setup, I learned that it's just the setup and not the instrument itself.
I think the setup is what the musician feels basically when they pick up the instrument or pick up the cello. It is the setup is really the tangible sensation of what they're experiencing as they play the instrument, be it the thickness and shape of the fingerboard is integral to what you feel in your left hand as you're playing. That does take into account like string height and comfort level. For cellists, especially in like any of the thumb position areas, it's really important to be as comfortable as you can up there, as it's already pretty hard to play. We spend a lot of time on setup to try to get the most out of the instrument as one possibly can. There's different bridges that we use sometimes. Your bridge, for instance, is a Belgian bridge, which tends to favor volume and usually bass overtones a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when I came in, my cello was super bright.
Yes.
And when I asked you to like make it a little bit darker, you knew exactly what to do. And even this morning, I came in and we changed it, or I asked for more on the upper two strings, right?
Yeah.
And you changed it and you knew what to do, but I have like no concept of that. So what do you do to the sound post too?
Well, we did a few things. In this case, the sound post needed to be a little bit closer to the feet of the bridge, especially the treble side. So it's going to favor more of those higher frequencies that you were asking about, get a better balance there. Another way in which we make adjustments is if we want a cello to ring more or ring less sometimes. We'll use different tail pieces because they have different weights, or different tail guts. Yours is a braided Kevlar. Sometimes we use like a synthetic gut, which is thicker and has less vibrations. Those things can also affect sound, and also like what overtones are being exposed.
One of the most important things to me when I'm playing is comfort. Like if my fingers are falling off the fingerboard, I hope that sometimes it's not just me, but I know you guys have helped me to plane the fingerboard sometimes and to change the shape of it so that it's more comfortable for me.
Yeah, I think that's something that goes into setup definitely. When we get instruments in, a lot of times we need to actually recarve the fingerboard or plane it to a better shape that's going to be more comfortable for the player. Also, setup involves working with the player and trying to meet them and find out what their needs are and seeing how we can actualize that on the workbench. So it takes a qualified luthier and a good player to kind of mix worlds together and make the best product we can.
And it helps that you're a cellist too, right?
Being a cellist and being an active player has certainly informed me as a luthier too, definitely. It also allows me to think about when we're setting up instruments. You know, I usually have an idea of a sound in my head, and from there we make choices in strings and in bridges and in a few things to get a really good cello sound.
Yeah, I've been grateful for your ears many times. So.
Thanks. At this point, I'm going to have Annie play a selection of our cellos. It's always a pleasure to have her in here playing, and she's going to give you a sampling of instruments and experience some different sound qualities and describe them and what she hears as she plays them. Enjoy.